In this project, we're going to take a look at how we can create complex animations in React and how you can share your animation code between components. This is a two-part series, so this is the first video explaining the loader and the structure behind the components. I hope you like it and let me know if you have any questions. So we're here now in the project, and I'm just firstly going to show you the project structure, the files and everything. I'm not going to go over everything like styling and stuff, but I'm going to show you the most important things. So here we have a fresh Next.js installment with the app directory. We have a components folder with 3 components: hero, loader, and logo. The logo is just an SVG, so not really important. And then we have a global CSS file, which we're going to take a look at later, and layout, which is just loading a custom font, and then rendering our pages essentially, or the single page we have. And page.js is where our 2 main components live, the loader and the hero, and those are at the moment living side by side. So the first component we're going to take a look at is the loader, which is the one you see on the screen now. So if we open up that component, you see we have some files here. The first one is data.js. This is essentially just the words you see on the screen. It's just for organizing stuff that I made this file. This should or would essentially come from a CMS or something. But yeah, this is just some words repeated 5 times. So it's like, let's see, change. Yeah. So until here, and then it repeats again. So 5 times. And then we have the index.js with the markup. And here we're just importing the words and looping over the words here. And yeah, that's essentially the the markup for this. And the styling is pretty simple as well. It's just some wrappers and some overflow hidden. So if you see, for example, here, if I turn this off, you see the repeating words going downwards. Just by having a fixed height, you can hide the rest. The one cool trick, I would say, the CSS trick you can take away from this is highlighting the word in the middle here. That is done by creating a linear gradient, which is position absolute over the hidden container, so here. And what I'm doing, I can show you easily if I just do this. If I turn this to red, you see it's just creating a gradient with a hard stop. And I just, these numbers are just trial and error, essentially, to get the middle one. So yeah, that's the styling for the loader. All of this code is on the GitHub repo. So if you want to check out the styling for everything, you can go check it out there. We're going to go through the more like animation-specific styling a bit later. And the next component is the hero. So I'm just gonna remove the loader for now. The hero is also pretty simple. We just have a Sass file and an index.js file. In the index, we just have the styling and the markup and some data attributes that I'm gonna explain later. So this is also just very simple styling. Okay, so let's get into how we animate these things. And the first one we're going to tackle is the loader. So let me just remove the hero and just focus on the loader for now. So just to explain some my initial idea behind this. The design and everything came from a Figma file that I have here. So you can see here, we have the loader, and I didn't create the actual prototype with the scrolling, but essentially I want this to scroll and land on Ultra. And at the same time, I want this progress bar to scale up and also go to 100. And after that, we go to the hero, essentially. And we can start by taking a look at the word or scrolling word animation. So as I said in the beginning, the data here is repeated 5 times downwards. So we have the first one here, and then we have 4 below. The reason I chose to do it 5 times and not more is because I can easily divide translating this up. So if I just show you here in the inspector, this one, I mean, so transform. So you can see when I go down now, because I wanted to stop at on Ultra, by repeating it 5 times, if we translate it down 80%, we are at the 5th element. But this way we know that each like 20th percentage, we land on the word Ultra. Yeah, so that's the reason behind that. So let's tackle that first. So to set up some Gsap animation, I already installed Gsap in this project. But you just do yarn add Gsap, and then let's just import that from Gsap. And we also need a use effect to run our animation code. So the first thing we need to do when working with animations in React is we need to target an element, we need to have a ref for it. So in React, you have something called useRef. And then we can set up some const. So let's say const loader ref, for example, equals useRef. And we'll set that to null by default. And if you say ref equals this one, now this loader ref references this whole element. So we'll do that for a couple of things. We need the progress. And we need the number. So progress number ref. And we also need the group of words that we're gonna do the transform on. So word groups ref equals use ref null. Cool. So then we have a couple elements. So now we just need to add these to the markup. So this is the number, and words group ref, that is this one. Okay, now we're all set up to start animating. So let's just try inside a use effect here first. So we'll create a use effect with an empty dependency array, which means it'll run just once on load. And we can start by trying this. So we'll say gsap.to words group ref.current. Current is the actual element itself. So the ref is like an object. So you need to access the actual element by saying .current. And then what we want to do is we want to change the Y position of this. So we want it to move up. Gsap has 2 properties for that. They either have Y or they have Y%. We're going to do Y% because that's what we actually need, or it's easier for us to reference. So we want it to go to -80. And let's set a duration of 5. Cool. So that gives us the effect. It looked a bit static maybe, and that's because we can apply easing. So let's do maybe expo dot in out. So easing is one of the things that you have to play around with, and you can find all the different easings on the GreenSock website. Just Google GreenSock easings. Okay, so we have that now. The next thing we're going to do is the progress animation, the bar at the bottom going across. So what we're going to do is we need to set up a new Gsap.to here, and that's going to be the progress ref.current. And so by default, you don't see the bar here now, and that's something I already set up. So the thing I usually do when I want to move to something is Gsap has both the to and from. So you can also do from scale of 0, and then it would essentially move back up to 1 if that's the default state. It's just nicer to have everything defined in the styling first. So if you see in the module.scss and we scroll down to the progress, you see I have a transform scale x of 0. So if we put that back to 0.5, you see it's halfway. So I already set it up so it's hidden by default. So the only thing we need to do is do scale x to 1. And we want this to have the same duration as the one above, so 5 seconds. We want these to match up. And then we have the same easing. So actually I'm going to change this to power 3 instead because it's a little aggressive right now. So these need the same easing. So yeah, let's check that out now. Whoops, this should be a 2. Nice. So you see, now we're almost there with the loader already. Now we just need the progress number. But before we do that, the thing I also want to talk about is structuring your code. And like we could continue here and like add more and more Gsap.to, but we're gonna make it better because having a lot of animation code in your use effect it can quickly get like very big. Like I've seen a lot of this in different projects, and it just becomes very hard to maintain. So actually what we're going to do is we're going to create a new file called animations.js. And in here, we can just move these. And let's paste them in here. And what we're going to do is we're going to say instead, we're going to export a const. So let's call it the first one. Intro animation. Intro animation. And that needs this to be accessible. And the thing we're going to do is we're going to change this from just a .to. We're going to create a new timeline. And we're going to return a timeline from the function. So instead of a Gsap.to, we do timeline.to. And by doing this, we can control the animation better later on. So we're going to do the same thing for the progress. Oops, const. So put this in here, Gsap.timeline. And then we just need to return it and change this to TL instead. And the last thing we need is the progress ref and the progress number ref. We're going to use that later. And lastly, we also need to import Gsap here. Okay, so now we have our two animation timelines. And the cool thing is now we can start importing these in our main file. And we can start chaining them. So this is just an example. I'm just going to show you, and I'll show you a different way after how we're actually going to do it. So we can say const TL equals gsap.timeline. And then for the timeline, we're going to do add and then intro animation. So we're adding this whole timeline to like a master timeline. And we can chain these, so we can add the progress animation to run after. The cool thing though is that, for example, if I want to overlap progress animation with the intro animation, because we're returning a timeline, the last argument here works for the whole timeline. So now this will start, or it will overlap with this by 2 seconds. You can also do percentage and stuff like that, but you can check that on the Gsap or Green Sock documentation. But what we're going to do instead of this, so we're going to remove this. Since we have a loader component in our page here, but we also have the hero. And what we want to do essentially is, since it's a loader, we want it to do its animation, load stuff, or like wait a certain amount of time until it's finished. And then we want to show this. Because what we're going to do is we're going to do the loading animation. Once that is finished, we remove the whole loader, and then we reveal or render the hero, which has its own animation that is building on top of our loader. So just to show you, what we're going to do is we're going to import some stuff in the page here. So I'm going to import use layout effect, which is essentially use effect, but this runs before the browser paints the first frame. And then we also need a use state. And we also need Gsap here. Like that. So we're going to have some states first. So we'll say const in an array or brackets, we're going to say loader finished, and also set loader finished. And that's going to be a state. So you use state, and it's going to be false by default. The loader is not finished by default, so it's going to be false. And then we're going to toggle it to true, and that will do the whole toggling the components. The second thing we're going to do is we're going to have a timeline here, and then set timeline. The reason for that is because we want to have a timeline here that we can share to the loader components. It could also be more components later on if you expanded this project, but for now, it's only the loader. So let's set up the use layout effect. with an empty dependency array. And what we're going to do as a step of like being good with animation code in React is we're going to use something called Gsap.context. So we'll say const context equals Gsap.context. And the way this works in React is inside this context bracket, whatever animation code we put in here, we can later revert it so we can clean up all our code by just having one command essentially. But in here, we're going to create our timeline. And inside the timeline, we're going to update this loader finished. So we're going to say, once this timeline is complete, we're going to run a function to set loader finished to true. And we have to set this timeline to this timeline. So we'll say set timeline TL. So now the useState timeline is referencing this timeline. And then inside the use effect, the use layout effect, we can say return, and then we can reference the context here. And that has a method called revert. So a lot of info right now, but I'm going to explain everything. So we have a context from Gsap where inside here, whatever animation code we put in here, once we say context.revert, and this will run automatically from React, like once it mounts and unmounts the components, we clean up everything. And that is very important, that you clean up your animation code. And then once the timeline is complete, we set the loader finished to true. And we're going to use this now to essentially say which one of these React should render. So what we're saying now, if loader finished, which is false by default, we'll render loader. If not, we'll render a hero. So is loader finished? No. Then we won't render this, but we'll render this instead. Once it's finished, then we'll render the hero. I just like to have it this way. You could also say, if not loader finished, then we'll render hero. If not, we'll render the loader. But yeah. So now what we've done is on the actual homepage, we've set up like a master timeline that we can use. And this timeline now, which is referencing this timeline in here, I know it's a bit confusing, but it'll make sense in a little bit. We can pass this to our loader. So if we say timeline is timeline, so now we're passing down this timeline to our component. So if we go into our loader again, and we accept a timeline prop, what we can do instead of having everything set up here just in this component, we can now say if timeline exists, then we'll do timeline.add. And then we'll pass in the intro animation, just like we did. And we can also pass in the progress animation, like that. We also need to pass in the elements that it needs. So for the intro animation, it needs the words group ref. And for the progress animation, it needs progress ref and progress number ref. Like that. So now what we're doing is we're saying add these timelines essentially to the master timeline here on the home page, because after our loader animation is finished, so on complete, we set the loader to finished, and then we reveal or render the hero instead. That's the idea behind it. So this way you can share your animation and timelines between components and know exactly when to render the new component and stuff like that. You can also, for example, push a new page to the router once this is complete, for example. So you can use this as a page transition as well. But we'll maybe look at that in a later video. But let's finish up the loader. So the last thing we need in the loader is collapsing the words in the intro animation that you saw in the beginning of the video. So let's create a new animation in here called collapse words. And that needs to take in the loader ref for the elements. So we'll say const TL equals Gsap.timeline again. Return TL. Then TL.to loader ref.current. And what we're going to do is we're going to use clip path for this. I already have the clip path here with the duration of 3 and an ease of expo.inout. This clip path is essentially just saying, let me see, if we have a rectangle here, it is saying scale down each of these points to 50% like that, and that will hide everything else. So it'll only show what's in the gray section here. So we want to scale that all the way down to 50% to meet in the middle of the word. And I set this up to have a default state in the styling, and then we just collapse it down here in the JavaScript. So let's add it to the timeline, and also include the ref we need. So let's check that out. I'm also just quickly gonna comment out this for now, just to work on the loader itself. So we say loader, timeline is timeline, and then just have that. Okay, that didn't work as expected. I'm just gonna quickly check what is wrong. Okay, so the issue was actually that the ref was in the wrong place. This should be on this element instead. So let's try that again. Nice. So the very last thing now for the intro is adding the number. So that is part of the progress animation. So we'll do progress number ref here. So we'll just continue here with the 2. So dot current. And instead of doing anything weird in the styling, I positioned the number absolute and 5 viewport width to the left, and we're essentially just going to move it over. So we're going to say X, it's going to do 100 viewport width, and it's going to have the same duration and easing as the one above, so it follows this one. So you can see now that the number comes across very late. But if we say here, that it starts at the same time. Then if we see, just runs across. And now we just wanted to update the number. So what we'll do is we'll say .2 again, and progress number ref .current. We're going to change the text content to 100 over the same duration of 5. We'll use something called round props, and that will reference the text content. So round props is to not have decimals. We don't want to count like 5 point something something. We just want it to go from 5 to 6 to 7 and so on. And that should also start at the same time. And then lastly, we just need to hide the number in the very end. .current. And we'll say Y24, so move down by 24 pixels. And auto alpha, which is visibility, we'll set that to 0. So if we take a look now, everything is working as expected. So let's go back to the loader now. Now we just need to tweak the collapsing of the words to be a little bit sooner. So we'll say we want this to overlap by 1 second. And that should look a little bit nicer. Okay, cool. Then we'll go back here. I'll just close this. And now we can bring back everything here. And now we're going to focus on the hero. So you can see now how it works. We run the intro animation. Once that is finished, we remove the loader and then we go into the hero. So the hero and the rest of the animation is going to be a new video. So I'm going to upload that in just a couple of days. So thank you for watching this video. I hope you got a lot from it, and also look out for the next video because I'm going to share some tips and tricks there as well. Anyway, have a good day and see you in the next one.